All right, good morning.
Good morning.
Welcome to the December session of the Winter Circle. We are fired up for today's message. It's always good to bring clarity to what we do. We bring in the best and the brightest from our community and beyond to give us a winning message on just what it takes to win in today's society. I couldn't be more excited about what we are going to hear today. So, couple things. Remember, our brain is at its best when we're curious. So let's put on our curiosity hat. Let's think of some good questions we might have at the end of our speech today. And think about just some of the things that you might be able to take to your classroom, to your extracurricular activities, and beyond. So it's with that I want to introduce our eighth grader, Sarah, to introduce our speaker. Sarah?
Our speaker today is Mr. Sean Fisher. Mr. Fisher was born and raised on the west side of Cleveland, Ohio in public housing projects to a single mother struggling with substance abuse. He is currently a successful small business owner and consultant. He is a veteran of the United States Army where he served as a sergeant. As a member of the United States Army, he has lived, visited, or trained in Japan, South Korea, Washington State, Kentucky, Oregon, and California. As a squad leader, it was his job to train soldiers to be honest, team-oriented, and disciplined in dependable and stressful situations. Mr. Fisher is a husband, father of 3 sons, and is very active with the Boy Scouts of America. Let's give Mr. Sean Fisher an Eastville.
Okay, before we go any further, let's give another round of applause for Sarah. She did an excellent job. Thank you all. And before I begin, I want to send out a few thanks. First of all, I'd like to thank your principal, Principal Rubel, for having me out. Also, Mr. Masucci and Miss Vicky for wiring me up. So doing a great job, thank you. And most importantly of all, because none of this will happen without you all getting up so early in the morning and coming out. This really gives me, this is awesome. It gives me hope for the future. So thank you all. Now, with that being said, as Sarah said, my name is Sean Fisher, and I'm your guest speaker today. I am going to deliver a short message on 3 things that I've found very important to me. Those are perseverance, education, and being a mentor or having mentors. Before we begin, I want to talk about myself just a little bit, some of the things that are very important to me. These are probably the 3 most important things that I think I've achieved in my life. Being a husband and a father, very important to me because I grew up without a father. Serving my country as a U.S. Army veteran, and also being a small business owner, able to contribute to our economy and control my fate and also leave a legacy for my family. What I want to do now is just kind of tell you a little bit about my background. Maybe. Oh, there we are. Okay, a little bit delay. All right, so I'll tell you a little story about adversity, perseverance, mentorship, and education. So if you look all the way to your left, there's a picture of me when I was about 13 or 14. Just tell you a little bit about my life. I grew up in Cleveland, Ohio, to a single mother who was struggling with a heroin addiction. We grew up in the Riverside Housing Projects, which is public housing for Cleveland, Ohio. These actually were, I'm kind of going to test you all. How many have heard of World War II? That's all, everyone's hands, right? Okay. So these were old Army barracks from World War II. Once the war ended, the government turned the barracks over to the city, and the city set it aside as public housing for people who didn't have a lot of money. So that's where I grew up at. And strangely enough, 30 years later, 40 years later, it still looks exactly the same. But that's where I grew up. I was born to a mother who was struggling with drugs. We never knew my father, so I grew up without a father. So I think that kind of drove me to be the type of father that I am just because I didn't have one. In my neighborhood, it was not the best area. There was a lot of drugs, a lot of crime, a lot of things that would lead you down a bad path. A lot of my cohorts or people that were my age, they were making poor choices. And I had every opportunity to make those poor choices. But luckily, if you look to the middle, I had a mentor, Mrs. Carrie A.R. Reeves. Mrs. Reeves was the director of a program in Cleveland, Ohio called Upward Bound. Upward Bound was a program that's designed to target minority students who came from poverty, sometimes broken homes, and they didn't have parents or anyone in their family who had gone to college. So the goal was to kind of close that gap. Before I go any further, how many of you have parents that have at least some college or a college degree? You want to raise your hands? Okay, perfect, great. So the program that Mrs. Reeves was over was designed to take someone who had the background I had, which was coming from a background where my mom actually only finished 8th grade. How many of you are in 8th grade now? Okay, so could you imagine not going to school any further past 8th grade? So that's where my mom was at, and that's the background I was raised up in. Then I met Ms. Reeves. She had a college and career readiness program called Upward Bound. I joined the program in 9th grade. It required us to take college classes while we were in high school. During the summer, we lived on college campuses, and we learned how it felt to be a college student. So it prepared us to go to college. Additionally, we visited over 4 years. We visited approximately 80 different colleges and universities, so it prepared me. Eventually, being in this program and having this mentor led me to something that a lot of people in my neighborhood traditionally did not do, which was become a high school graduate. So that's me. I'm going to date myself here. That's me in the class of 93. That was my proudest achievement, was becoming a high school graduate, because it opened up so many, not that you should stop at high school, but it opened up so many other doors for me. It was a gateway, right? So you can't go to college, you can't become a small business owner, those things, without being a high school graduate. So what you have there is the story of adversity, where I grew up at, the story of mentorship, one of my mentors, and that also lets you know that your mentor can be a male or female. It doesn't matter. They can have a significant impact on your life. I'm a male, but my greatest mentor and my greatest memories are from a female mentor, so that's very important. So keep that in mind, everyone. Then high school graduation. I'm going to go ahead and move on. Okay, so next thing I want to talk to you about is the power of education, mentoring, and training to move you to a higher place in your life. So I graduated from high school, and I was like, okay, what next? The next thing was I enrolled in college, the University of Toledo. I earned a bachelor's degree from the University of Toledo. Next, I went to Wayne State, and I earned a master's degree. Then I guess I wasn't done. I was glutton for punishment, so I went back and I earned a third degree, an ed specialist degree in administration. This is a picture of me graduating with my master's, but I earned one more degree afterwards. So that kind of set me up for success. You have to have the education piece, whether it's a 4-year degree, it's a skills trade training, you have to have some kind of education. The next thing was I spent 6 years in the Army after I graduated college. And Sarah kind of covered that when she said the different countries that I lived in. So again, a mentor intervened. I came out of college and I was like, hey, what am I going to do? I have this education, but I don't necessarily know how to be successful in the real world. This is where I met General Petard. He is a 2-star general, a West Point graduate, a Harvard graduate, and he also worked for President Clinton 3 years in a row. He was the senior officer that was responsible. Let me back up some. How many people have seen in movies where there's like this military guy with a uniform with all kind of medals, and he's carrying a suitcase that's like handcuffed to his wrist? Anybody ever seen that? Okay, cool. Let me pick one person. Do you have any idea what's in that suitcase? Anyone? Right here. Not quite. Good guess though. Someone else? Right here. Exactly. He's exactly right. Nuclear launch code. So all the codes that authorize nuclear weapons to be launched, he carried for 3 years. So I had the pleasure of actually working for him for a year. And he taught me all kind of important things. You know, I had the experience of actually, for a year, having a mentor that was a Harvard graduate, a West Point graduate, and actually worked for the president. So he taught me all kind of things, but the biggest thing that he taught me was the importance of being a responsible adult someone could depend on, holding yourself accountable, and also being a great father and husband. Now remember, I grew up and I didn't have those things, so I had to learn it from other people. The last thing I want to show you is, that was my mentoring, but also I went to the Army Leadership School, which was a 30-day program, 150 hours of intense leadership corporate level training. So that was my graduation class. So there you have the education piece, the mentoring, and the training piece. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring it all home. All these things led to me becoming a leader. So leaders are kind of born, but they're also made. You're born with some kind of executive leadership skills, but they have to be developed. So after all those experiences in my life and having the mentorship and the education, I became myself, an educator, mentor. So that's me as I was a principal for 3 years. That's me actually training a future administrator. We're actually going over some different information. And again, in the middle, the most important thing that I've done, being an active father. Those are my 3 sons, Ethan, Aiden, and Sean. And the last thing, what I'm doing now, I go around and I present. This is me giving a presentation on how to use data to be a better teacher. This was up in Traverse City. So that's kind of the story of how I became a leader. Now, I know I've mentioned some other greatest accomplishments, but this was my single greatest accomplishment. This was my wedding, and my mom has passed since. We lost her maybe 10 years ago, but the good thing is that, what did I tell you she struggled with in the beginning? Does anybody remember? Drugs, right? In this picture, does she look like someone that's on drugs? No. So she was able, through perseverance and focus, she was able to break her addiction, and the last 15 years of her life, live a quality life where she was actually productive. So this was my wedding, and my mom and I took a picture together. So the greatest accomplishment was that she broke the cycle of addiction, and I broke the cycle of poverty. And actually, I'll go back. I said our greatest accomplishment because, remember, it was always she and I. I didn't have a father, so it was always my mom and I, so it was our greatest accomplishment. With that being said, I'll turn it over to you all. Do you have any questions? I heard a buzzer ring. Are we good still? Okay. Remember, no question is too small or unimportant. Does anyone have any questions? Oh, right here. Can you tell me your name, please? Reese? Hey, Reese, how are you? Good.
Why did you want to become an army man?
Why did I want, I had a history of family members serving in the armed forces, but also I knew coming out of the neighborhood that I came out of, there were some leadership skills that I was just missing, and I felt that being part of something greater than myself, specifically the military, I could learn some of those skills and also have a legacy that lives on, because there's a saying that members of the Army may die, but their legacy lives on through the military and the impact that we have. This great country is here because we have a strong military. Thank you, Reese. Did I miss anyone? I'll go back and forth. There we are. Hi, sweetie, how are you?
What was your biggest setback? I'm Lily.
You say it one more time.
I'm Lily.
Lily? Hey, Lily.
What was your biggest setback?
My biggest setback? My biggest setback, I think, was my freshman year in college. I came from a large urban school district, and I wasn't properly prepared. So this is something for you all to focus on right now. I wasn't properly prepared for higher level math. So my first year, I had to take a developmental math class to prepare me to be on grade level. So that was my biggest setback. I ended up actually doing it over the summer because I knew math wasn't my strong area. Go figure, I married a math teacher, by the way, I just want to put that out there. So I spent the summer just focusing on building my math skills. So my second year when I came back, there were no issues. Mm-hmm. What do we have over here? Can I have your name?
Hayden,
Hey, Hayden.
where were you stationed for the longest?
I was stationed in the Republic of Korea for 26 months. While I was there, part of my duties were I was a cavalry scout. Has anyone heard of a scout? Anybody kind of have an idea what a scout does? It's almost like in the Wild West where you kind of hide in the hills and you kind of sneak up on people and you get information. So that was our job. We actually watched the North Korean border between South and North Korea. So that's where I was stationed the longest. Do I have someone over here? Oh. Here we go.
What was it like in your Army training?
What was it like? There were different components. Each component was difficult, but some were difficult physically and some were difficult mentally. So near the end, when I became a sergeant, the school that we went to for 30 days, it was more challenging because it was all mental and leadership based. Okay.
So I'm thinking about joining the Marines, so how should I go about doing that?
Okay, so the first thing you want to do now is what you're doing right now. Stay in school and learn. The military wants really smart members because they found that smart members are more effective. Actually, when I was going in, they actually were paying more. They would give you a bonus if you were a college graduate, and they would even give you a bonus for being a high school graduate because they found that they made better decisions. So that's the first thing, right? Get your mental abilities together, your decision making, your leadership. The next thing is, it's very physical. So start running now. You know, there are apps, I like Endomondo. There's an app that will train you to run 5K. I believe the Marines, in the Army, we had to run 2 miles. In the Marines, it's a 3 mile run. So start running now, okay? Trying to alternate back and forth. There we go. What's poverty? Oh, that is a great question. No, I wish no one in the world knew what poverty was. So poverty is, have you heard of being rich? Okay, so it is the exact opposite of being rich. It's not having any resources financially, logistically, so not having food, not having clothes that you need, not having money, not having great housing, not having access to medical services. Did that kind of answer your question? And what's your name, young man? Will. Did I answer your question, Will? Okay, good. What do we have right here?
What would you say that?
Oh, I pointed at her, then I'll get you next, okay? Thank you.
What was the toughest part of
What was the toughest part of my career? So I would say I was a school administrator for 6 years before starting my own business and becoming a consultant. I would say being a school administrator, because you never reach all the kids that you want to reach. And initially I started my career out in the suburbs, but then I moved to the inner city. And just the kids that you don't reach, you know what's waiting for them. Like when Will asked about poverty, I know about the cycle of poverty because I grew up within it. And I know the things that can happen and the opportunities that are lost. So I think that was the hardest part for me, not being able to save every kid. I think I promised. Yep.
What would you say the toughest battle that you ever had was?
The toughest what?
Battle that you ever had?
Are you talking military-wise?
Yeah.
Let's have that conversation after, not necessarily on camera. Let's have that, we'll have that conversation. But I'll come back to you, okay? What's your name?
Anthony.
Anthony? Make sure you come back to me, and Anthony, I'll talk to you about that one. Go ahead.
Were there any teachers or counselors that really helped you achieve your dream of being in the Army?
I would say no, because I was a little bit different. I went in after I graduated from college. So it was, I hate to kind of say this, but I was a fully developed, thinking about it at 22, but I was a fully developed adult. So it was kind of a decision I made. As I was getting ready to go into the real world, I realized that I had the education, but there were some life skills I didn't have. So I thought that going into the military, I could learn those skills, and I did. Yep, thank you. Let me go back here.
Okay. My name is Nevadita.
Say it one more time.
Nevadita.
Nevadita.
What was the most important thing that you learned in Army training, leadership training, and how did you use it after?
Oh, perfect. That is an excellent question. Thank you. So the greatest lesson I learned in the Army was accountability, being accountable to those that you lead. Realizing that everyone, especially quote unquote the person with the least power, is the most important because they're the most helpless and you're responsible for their safety. So being accountable to the people you lead. So that taught me when I became a teacher, then I became an administrator, I always thought about my students first. I said, is this what I would want for my children? So I always held myself accountable to my students when I was a teacher. And as an administrator, I held myself accountable to the teachers that I led. And it taught me also to have an open ear and always listen to what they had to say. Thank you. Go ahead. Now I'll get you over there.
My name's Varun. So what was your largest leadership takeaway from your entire career?
I would say not only the accountability piece that I said earlier, but being confident and prepared. So I spent my whole career making sure that I could do the jobs that I wanted to do. Because nothing's worse than getting into a job and having people depend on you and you can't be successful. I was a coach. I was a middle school basketball coach and a high school varsity track coach. And if I run a play and I get my shooting guard open, I expect them to knock down the shot, right? So same thing I want in the professional world. Okay. I saw someone over here. I thought maybe? No? Any more questions? No more hands? Oh, here we go.
What's the business side?
Okay, so I own a consulting firm. The consulting firm is called Sean Fisher Senior and Educational Associates Consulting Firm. And we are a team of, myself as the owner, and I have 7 other educators that I work with, and we travel around the state, and we actually train teachers. So in some schools, we train teachers on how to look at scores and achievement data and how to adjust their instruction. In some cases, we look at behaviors in a school. So if there's a high number of suspensions, a high number of referrals, we'll look at things that we could do differently to lower those suspensions or referrals. And in some cases, we have executive coaches who work with superintendents or central office administrators to work on some of their leadership skills. Did that help you? Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Maybe just one more? Oh, there we go, Mr. Rubel, Principal Rubel.
So here we are in middle school, and some of us are in fourth and fifth grade, but maybe thinking about high school, any suggestions about what to do now in elementary and middle school to prepare for high school?
Oh, absolutely. Thank you for asking that question. So I was a middle school principal and a middle school, I was a 7th to 8th grade health teacher, and I was a middle school principal. So I love middle school. Middle school is my favorite part of the K through 12, well actually it's starting to be K through 14 system now. So what I would tell you all is build your study skills now, because high school is very serious. Right now, you don't have credits, so you have a little bit of flexibility. Middle school is half building your social skills and half academics. But when you get to high school, it's the grind. You're on a 4-year grind to college or the military or your trade school. So right now, learn your study skills, right? Understand literacy, understand not just how to decode when you're reading, but understand. Learn how to, even more so, learn how to ask great questions, because we learn through asking questions, not just sitting and getting. So learn how to ask great questions. And I would say also specifically focus on building your math skills and your literacy skills. Those are 2 things that are going to help you the most.
How about a round of applause for this? How about that? What a great message today. You know, this message of essentially that knowledge is power, that the things that we do right now are going to prepare us for success in high school and beyond. I also love the idea of mentorship and seeking out those people that can be those shining lights to lead us to the directions that we want to go. So it's with that now it's our responsibility to take these positive messages to our classrooms and our extracurricular activities and just be the best versions of ourselves. Go have a great day, and we'll see you in January.